You talk about, the tiny changes making a big difference. And you use the example of like a plane going, off its route slightly by 1%. A lot of people think those tiny changes aren't doing anything, but I would like you to talk to that and why they actually are so important.
So, if you're taking off on a plane from Los Angeles and you're heading towards New York, all you got to do is shift the nose of the plane 6, 7 feet, maybe 8 feet, and you end up in Washington, D.C. rather than New York. Like it's just this small shift in initial trajectory that, when compounded over the distance of the United States, puts you in a very different destination. Life is often like that. Like you have this small change in initial trajectory. It doesn't feel like much to read for 10 minutes a day. But the person who always goes to bed a little bit smarter than they were when they woke up, the person who always finds a little bit of time to learn something new each day, over 10 or 20 or 30 years, that can be a pretty meaningful difference in wisdom and insight. It doesn't feel like much to, knock out one extra task each day. Maybe it's sending one email or making one extra sales call. On any given day, that does not make you an all-star. But over a 10 or 20 or 30-year career, the person who always makes one extra sales call ends up with better results. And so this small change in initial trajectory, this action that seems pretty insignificant or easy to dismiss on any given day, it compounds, it transforms over time. Time will magnify whatever you feed it. So if you have good habits, time becomes your ally. And every day that goes by, you put yourself in a stronger position. And if you have bad habits, time becomes your enemy. And every day that goes by, you dig the hole a little bit deeper. And so I think this is one of the big things, kind of the pillar ideas from Atomic Habits, which is this emphasis on trajectory rather than position. There's a lot of discussion about position in life. What's the number on the scale? How much money's in the bank account? What's the current stock price? What are the quarterly earnings? We have all these ways of measuring our current position. And then if we aren't where we said we wanted to be, or we haven't achieved what we set out to achieve, we start to feel guilty or judge ourselves for it. And what I'm encouraging is to say, listen, just for a minute, like let's stop worrying so much about our current position and instead focus a little bit more on our current trajectory. Is the arrow pointed up and to the right, or have you flatlined? Are you getting 1% better or 1% worse? Because if you're on a good trajectory, all you need is time. But if you're on a bad trajectory, it's not going to end well, even if you're in a pretty strong position right now. And so this concept of shifting the nose of the plane a few feet or getting 1% better each day, trying to emphasize trajectory over position, it's really about getting you to ask yourself, am I walking the right path? Am I on a good path right now that'll lead me to where I want to be, or does something need to change? And I think that's one of the most powerful things that your habits can do, is they can set you on the right path.
And I think also if we're not taking if we're doing the small things at the start, especially if we're building habits, it's a lot easier than completely changing our life and, okay, I'm going to do this habit and then this and this and this, and then it's just hard to maintain. But those little ones are far easier. I wonder, my producer and I were just talking before you came on, and we were talking about our phone addiction. And I was like, I'm going to ask James about this and how we're both addicted to our phones. And it's like a shocking habit. And, I'm in the personal development space and have been for many years. I can reel off all the reasons why not and tell everyone, preach it to everyone else. But it's something that I find and my producer finds really hard, right? Because, it's email, it's messages, it's a host of things, social media, which, obviously can be hideous at times, but also good in other senses. And I wonder, how do we beat phone addiction?
Well, what you're mentioning is one of the core problems, which is that there is a blending of context. There's a blending of usefulness and unusefulness that is happening on the same device. And one thing that research has shown is that, generally speaking, it's easier to stick to a new habit if it's the single thing that's happening in that context. So if you're trying to build a meditation habit, that you have a spot, a corner where you have a pillow and it's the meditation corner, and that's the only thing that happens there. Or if you're trying to build a journaling habit, there's one coffee shop that you go to, and that's the journaling coffee shop, and it's the only thing that you do there. And by linking very cleanly and very clearly a new habit to a specific context, it becomes easier for that to be the thing that you do, and you slide into that pattern when you're there and you don't get distracted. Your phone is like the exact opposite of that. It's so easy to get distracted because all you have to do is just tap your thumb on a different part of the screen, and suddenly you're listening to an audiobook or playing a video game or browsing social media or reading on your favorite website. And because it can do so many different things, it's almost impossible for it not to distract you, unless you take a radical measure like deleting all the apps. Like this is something I've just done the last year and a half or so, but I don't have any social media on my phone anymore. I can use
Mm.
them on my desktop, but I just don't have the apps on my phone. Email was the most radical one that I did about 6 months ago. I don't have email on my phone anymore. I
Oh,
can use it on
wow.
the desktop, but I don't have it on my phone. And what I found was that, like, if I'm being honest about when do I truly need to answer an email and I only have my phone with me, it's probably like twice a year that happens. And if I'm in a situation where I'm in an airport, I'm not around a computer or whatever, and I have to get to this response out right away, I'll just download the app again and send
Mm.
the email, and then I'll delete it. And I can, that's enough friction that I'm not going to download the app just to check Gmail randomly because I'm bored and don't have anything to do for 20 seconds. But I will download it if I genuinely need to get this email out. And so by introducing a little bit of friction, that changes how I use the phone. And I have noticed over the last 6 months or so, I am a little less likely to pick it up because there's not that much useful that happens on it. Like
Yeah.
it's just not as interesting as it was before. I'll pick it up if I need to text somebody or if I need to call someone. I can still get on the internet. I do still have a web browser on there. So that's probably the thing I do most frequently now is look at websites, but no social media, no email really changes how I use it.
Wow.
The other thing that I'll mention is that a lot of these things, these habits that we feel like, oh, I just do them a little more than I want, or I don't want to spend so much time on them. It's not that we don't want to do them at all. It's just that we don't want them to occupy as much space in our life. And so I found that if I can redesign my environment a little bit, that often is enough to curtail the habit to the desired degree. So, as an example, with our phones, I can't do this every day, but I try to do it frequently. And whenever I do, I'd say, let's say 70% of days, I can leave my phone in another room until lunch.
Wow.
And I almost always have a better day when I do that. And I'm like everybody else. If my phone is next to me, I'll pick it up and check it every 3 minutes just because it's there. But if I leave it in another room, I have a home office. And so it's only like 30 seconds away, but I never go get it. And I always think that's so interesting. Like, did I want it or not? Like in the
Mm.
one sense, I wanted it bad enough that I would check it every 3 minutes if it was next to me. But I never wanted it so bad that I would walk 30 seconds down the hallway to go get it.
Mm.
And a lot of habits are like that. If you just introduce a little bit of friction, it will reduce itself to sort of the desired degree or to a better degree. I've noticed that with beer as well. If I buy a 6 pack of beer and put it in the fridge and if it's in the door where I can see it as soon as I open it, I'll grab one and drink it with dinner just because it's there. But if I put it like on the lowest shelf in the fridge, kind of tucked all the way back, I got to bend down to be able to see it. Sometimes I'll forget that I even bought it. It'll be there for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. I won't even remember that it's there. And so, again, this does not work for everything. And I don't think it would work for like a true addiction if you were struggling with alcoholism, for
Mm.
example. But many habits, and for many people, you will find that if you just introduce a little friction, put some more steps between you and the behavior, it will often reduce itself to the degree that you want it to.